Welcome to our first in-person KBYG Know Before You Grow Forum of 2025. Glad you're here. For the few of you who may not know me, Dave Alden, the chair of Urban Chat. We usually start off by introducing dignitaries who are here. Really, the only one who's a dignitary, sort of, is the mayor, and he's going to be speaking on his own in a couple of minutes. So, Kevin and Dennis, up until 2 months ago, you were dignitary. Now you're not. Former council member Dennis Posake. Things that Urban Chat's doing in the near future. This is always an opportunity to get you back. Tomorrow, noon, Aquas will be our monthly lunch. And after the energy at both the film festival and the nonprofit mixer, we expect a big group tomorrow. I've been disappointed before, but there are a lot of new people who were excited by what they heard, who had good conversations, both after the film festival and at the end of the nonprofit mixer. So it could be 15, 20 people tomorrow. So if you get a chance to join us, great, good for you. And then 2 weeks from tonight, something that's gonna be really fun. At least a fair number of you, I hope, are aware of the cul-de-sac Tempe project. Damn, I thought everybody knew about that project. I've been following it for years. I know, I'm gonna have to. It's a completely car-free project in Tempe, Arizona. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Okay. It's next to a rail station. It's got good bike access. And if you live there, you cannot own a car. There's a little parking for visitors and people who work in the shops, but that's it. When I first heard about it, I was of the opinion that there's no way that's ever going to work. Not only has it worked, the last thing I heard, 85, 90% rented up, but the cul-de-sac people are looking at partnerships elsewhere in the country because there's enough interest in that. You know, as the mayor says, as long as there's 5% of the people willing to live in a project like that, you can make something work. So it's really sort of cool that it's happening. The director of development for that project now lives in Vacaville. I know, don't make the Vacaville jokes yet. He's working for California forever. I've been introduced to him by Strong Towns. We've been talking regularly. He is now scheduled to be here 2 weeks from tonight to talk about his experiences with cul-de-sac and elsewhere. Name of his talk is Neighborhoods for People, Not Cars. So put that on your calendar now. With that, I think I have nothing else to say other than to introduce our semi-dignitary mayor, Kevin, who will introduce the speaker.
Well, it's my honor to get to introduce our guest speaker tonight. And how perfect, you know, I've been thinking about housing for a very long time and what people need and what we can do in Petaluma to have better housing, more and different kinds of housing. And I thought, what do we have that's not typical? I mean, we have a lot of affordable housing that we're trying to work on. We have market rate, which chases itself and, you know, tries to get into town. But what else could be here and what else could be benefit from being in the downtown area? And so we have Jason tonight. Jason Reyes of Calson Management, who's going to join and discuss active senior housing in the downtown area. And this is not elder, this is active. And the fun of having it in downtown is it adds a different mix. We get to have people who are just frankly tired of maintenance of their yard and the houses themselves. It's a game changer, freeing people, housing for younger folks. So I do want to mention that Jason's firm is a creative, collaborative community of design. So your mother was involved, actually. And so there seems to be, you've got a few stories to tell, and I want to invite Jason Reyes to speak to us tonight. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Pleasure, honor to be here. Can you have golf carts in the cul-de-sac, by the way? No cars, but does a golf cart count? Will you ask for me? Because, you know, I might have to. No, right? Golf carts. Very, I think, similar conversation we're having is looking at ways to innovate urban environments, and we're going to talk about the challenges of that. So I hope everyone brought a pillow and a blanket. We're going to be here all night. The list is long, but then we're going to talk about how we can get there and how we overcome it. And then when we do overcome it, what are the benefits that come out of it? So The senior living world is kind of chopped up into a few different categories. You have assisted living and memory care, which is one category, and those are licensed facilities, people who need help, activities of daily living. We do quite a bit of that. There is skilled nursing, where you need real medical attention, right? And you need to be seen by doctors and physicians. There's what we used to call independent living, which is kind of like just basically an apartment complex for 55 and up, but not much more than that. And then there is this very, very new concept. And when I say very, very new, I mean over the kind of like last 5 to 6 years of what is called active adult. And active adult senior living is a bit of a combination of independent living, what you would think of it to be, because it is very independent, but it also has some of those amenities that folks like in the social environment of assisted living. So, arts and crafts rooms and, rec rooms, essentially a college dorm room for folks who are in their 60s and 70s. And when you get to your 80s is typically when that assisted living range takes place. So does that mean you have to leave your active adult environment? No, absolutely not. You just have to get in-home health care, in-home care. And there's a lot of ways that we look at doing it. But the big hype right now is active adults. And as you can see on the screen, it looks pretty cool. Some pickleball courts and pools and bocce ball courts and all the activities. The concept is that it is primarily folks that are in their late 60s, early 70s, and all the way into their 80s. And it is it's what everyone wants to do, but very, very difficult to do. And part of the reason that it's difficult to do because it really only works in urban areas. Putting a active adult community in a suburban area outside of kind of the logical areas where you have entertainment and food and so forth, we have found, because again, it's very new, we've found that they haven't been successful. And again, because they really, the environment is what makes this whole thing happen. So when you look at why do we not have this right now in Petaluma in every single city, because we know that there's a huge demand for it. And a lot of it comes down to the urban environment challenges and developing in urban environments, limited land space, right? First and foremost. So with limited land space, you're looking at, most lots in urban areas. If you get a full acre, you're really lucky. And developing anything under a full acre is next to impossible unless you want to go 20 stories tall. At the end of the day, we have to get economies of scale, which means you have to get numbers. When you get numbers and you get those economies of scale, if you're lucky to get that lot, you got infrastructure problems because your urban downtown areas were the first ones developed, and the sewer is not that great, and the water pressure is not that great, and everything else in most urban areas needs to be upgraded in order to handle a project of this kind of capacity. And then the cities go, hey, we love it. Can you just upgrade the capacity for us? And that makes the cost, right, very, very difficult. And that's what the next one on the list is, high costs. High costs because typically those things need to be done. There's offsite improvements that need to be done. And you're talking about building in an area where you don't have a lot of room. You don't have room to set up. You don't have room for your construction workers to park. You have all these unique challenges that you wouldn't have in a suburban area where you can just have a little lay down yard and your neighbor's comfortable and everyone's helping out. You have to have traffic and a whole slew of other things that really, really drives the cost up. And in urban areas, you have to go vertical, right? We can't build a 2-story building. That doesn't quite make sense. We're never going to get the unit count. So, comes with that metal stud framing and iron framing. And so in general, the cost of construction goes up, which is why we need the unit count. And then the community. You'd be surprised how many folks don't want new construction in their new urban areas. I've been ran out of multiple jurisdictions. We've had the pleasure of developing $500 million of senior housing over the last 10 years. And so we've seen it all, high, low, good, bad. But there's a lot of people who think that the seniors are crazy people and they shouldn't actually be in an urban environment. put them off the pasture. And I've heard that from many cities over and over and over again. And it's really misguided. It's a reason why you have a lot of challenges. A lot of cities are struggling and they're not growing and they're not vibrant because they're not embracing what is really the inevitable, which is the silver tsunami, right? This is the first year, 2025. Our very first baby boomer is going to hit 80 years old. So that is fantastic. And we know we have 15 more years. So the highest percentage of the population, and by the way, California is the 6th fastest aging demographic in the entire country. So if you're not embracing that as an organization, as a city, as a community, you are missing the bus. And parking requirements, right? That's always a big thing in urban areas. How do we park this? The multifamily guys want to come in, but they have kids and 3 cars and 15 electric car stations and all of the things that come along with that. So parking is always another big challenge. And one thing that comes along with urban development is the cities go, hey, we really love this idea. Let's go ahead and build it. But we need you to build a parking garage to park all those people. And you don't have the parking garage and you don't have the parking structure. And now you got to figure out how to make this work. So some of the things that we look at when we're developing is we look at the city's willingness to not just only participate in, wanting to be part of something, in a senior living space in an urban environment, but we're also looking at who's not going to just pass the buck to us because you can't, it doesn't pencil at some point in time. And so when cities are investing in their own parking garages, when cities are investing in their own parking, solutions and how they work through that, and even just their parking requirements, it is always #1 topic on the list. And then of course, there's height limits. You build a 4-story building and you cast a shadow on somebody else's building and then someone's suing you. It's unbelievable. It's fun. They will find, the oldest of things. I had a masonry building. It was literally just cinder blocks, was deemed historical because they don't build them like that anymore. And there's a reason for that. Again, we go through infrastructure, and then affordable housing is always a big thing, right? We know cities need arena numbers. We know the pressure and the demand and how to do it, but you will get lots of jurisdictions who want more than what a general project would require, and then you put them in different AMAs, and they want to deed restrict, and again, it gets very, very difficult. So we keep going on, right? There's lots of difficulties here. I'll get to the good stuff, I promise. But we look at urban environments and we know development cost is so much more. $1,500 a square foot is on average. And why is that? Because the mayor gets shook down by the unions. And because it's an urban project, the unions come in and they say, we want this to be a union project because it's the face of the city. It's downtown. It's urban. And so next thing you know, we got Davis-Bacon, and Davis-Bacon, for all of you probably know, it's union wages for the entire project. So that drives costs up significantly. And overall, it's a labor, right? $50 an hour, every single guy on a job, and a project like this, takes 2 to 3 years to build. So you put it all together, and it's a lot of money. And then we have the biggest challenge is the not in my backyard. And that's what we get the most, right? We get folks who will delay your projects. The first time they want you to do an environmental impact report, you may as well walk away. And people will pay to push that. And so you have to really garner the support. And it's hardest to garner the support of your citizens in your urban areas. They have the most to say about those key areas. And then it segregates the communities, it slows progression, affordable housing. It's easier to walk away than it is to build it. And most developers just will say that there's easier ways to make money. But if we embrace it, if we actually look at what we're garnering, if we're able to educate the communities and the jurisdictions, and if we're really able to take the benefits out of it, they're vast. And so what we look at is we really look at a decline in parking requirements. And we're looking at right now, retail across America is pretty much dead. And that's because no one goes to the stores, they don't shop, everything's online. And that's because no one goes to the urban downtowns anymore to buy anything. But active seniors do. Active seniors go to the restaurants. They're there when the restaurants aren't busy. They're there during the lunchtime when it's slow. They're down at the bookstore, they're at the coffee stores. It's this population that keeps those little businesses open. So why you don't allow them to live in the same area is baffling. So what we look at that, and then we just look at the general social engagement of it as well. Seniors and gentlemen, we just don't live as long as the women do. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. And so what happens is a lot of times we get isolated as seniors. And then you don't have someone to talk to, and then you're in your house by yourself, and the kids are worried. So when you're able to bring folks together with the same common interest, not only does it spark the general area, but it really improves the community and the socialization of all the residents who are involved. And it's a story that people want to tell. It's the story that you tell your friends where you live and how amazing it is. It's what draws people to your area, because you don't have a lot of this around the country right now because of all the challenges we talked about. Again, reduced parking needs. Seniors do far less driving, which means less parking needed. They don't have, average senior household only has one vehicle. They don't have 3 or 4 like the multifamily households do. A lot of active adults are still riding bikes. They're walking. They are doing all of the things that make it easier to, for folks in downtown urban areas to live in. And so what we're looking at, on building and developing it is we have smaller footprints. So in order to do that, we have to do things like vertical stacking, where, a lot of designs, in order to make it affordable, are looking at coming in with, stacked designs where you can almost pre-build certain portions of the building and stack them. And what we're ultimately looking to do is we're looking to reduce the cost of construction. An average building right now in an urban environment to build is around $750,000 a unit for a 1-bedroom. Now, that also includes common areas and everything else. It's not just the 1-bedroom. It's everything that comes along with it: the parking, the underground, everything, the port cochere, the entire kit and caboodle. But when you look at it on a per unit basis, it's $750,000 a unit. And, developers are in it mostly for profits. And so you're looking at trying to break $1 million on a resale value to have it even pencil to where a bank will give you a loan on it. And so in order to do that, we look at, stacking, we look at sharing amenities and finding ways to be creative in the process, but that takes cities to help. Cities often, they have design review boards, which are great, but if the design they're looking for, is the Taj Mahal, it makes it really difficult. So again, a big part of the component of working together is being able to understand these areas. But what we do know is they create increased foot traffic. We know that they increase spend at our shops. It is stronger community engagement because a lot of the things, most of your downtowns areas are going less from retail and more to services. I don't know if you've noticed, but they're wine bars, and they are art classes, and they're all because people aren't paying for goods, they're paying for services. And so, in order to keep those services alive, it is this population it is the senior population who can really keep it alive. And that really changes the tone and the revitalization of a lot of downtowns. Downtowns in most of America and most of California at nighttime is overran by the bar scene and people coming in from out of town, and the things that go along with that. But you can really change your whole atmosphere of a downtown by putting in the right people who live there. And in this case, we're really talking about active adult. And so really what, kind of in conclusion, what we're talking about here is, how do we get into a downtown area like downtown Petaluma? How do we work together to build a community, an active adult community for folks to be able to not just live in downtown, but really embrace it and change it and change the way that it is that people live there and how they see living there. And it comes with high-end amenities, and it's nice, and they are expensive, but again, there's a lot that comes along with that. I am here. Oh, you're good. Again, just really going through the main steps and kind of the main issues, and would love to field any questions that you might have, about active adults or senior living or developing in downtown, any of that.
So if we can make sure that we either repeat the question or get the question on mic, that would be super helpful. And I see hands already.
So I'm glad you're here. So my name's Chris. I am one of the main champions for age-friendly Petaluma. So I have a real interest in this. First of all, when you say, like, what's the range of rents in these places?
Yeah, because of the cost and the amenities that they're providing, they're slightly above market rate rents. And they're not as much as assisted living or senior living because they're not licensed, which means you're not paying for the care, you're not paying for the meals. What you are paying additional for is you're paying additional for the rec room type activities. They typically have an activities director who is always running events. So slightly above market rate is what something like this costs. It is expensive.
Are you familiar with Vivalon in San Rafael?
The Avalon?
No, Vivalon, Vivalon.
No.
I was there today. I
Yeah.
moderated an event. They have a healthy aging campus.
Yeah.
That has on the lower floors. Well, you walk in the front door and there just happens to be a clinic like right next door. So if you need medical stuff, it's right there.
Yeah.
They have a really active space with classrooms, a little auditorium.
Yep.
They have a great cafeteria. And then above it, they have affordable housing. They have floors of affordable housing. And the people who live in the affordable housing don't have to take part in the Vivalon stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's independent,
Totally.
but it's, I don't know. That's what I personally would, this is great. Seniors need housing. I worry that it's too expensive.
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that the people who would come here to live are people who are not already in Petaluma. They're people from San Francisco or other places that are ready to retire and they go, oh, let's go live in Petaluma. But that the older adults who live in Petaluma, wouldn't be able to live there. And I haven't done any market research, so I don't know. So I'm all in favor of it.
Yeah.
And, I just have concerns that we'd get more activity downtown, but what about the people who already live here? Like, is it, how many of the people here would go, yeah, hey, I'm all for this.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk how you get there first. How do people pay for it? So number one, it's expensive, and it's more expensive because the place you're talking about is not in a downtown urban environment, right? So all those things we talked about, those are things that drive up cost. So even if you want to be a nonprofit organization and you do it as a nonprofit, which we do nonprofit development as well, you still have to get a certain high enough revenue in order for you to even be able to get the lender to give you the loan to build it, right? And what that looks like is 1.2 times your debt service. So this is a real challenge. I could go build what you're talking about out in the suburbs, no problem. We do it all the time. But to build it here in downtown doesn't work that way.
Well, I'll just say Vivalon is in downtown San Rafael. It's on 3rd Street. It's in downtown. So.
And the whole thing's affordable?
Not all of it is affordable,
Yeah.
but actually, I think it is all affordable, and they actually even have some supported housing there. It's Eden Housing handles the housing part of it,
Yeah.
but
Is it luxury?
no,
Oh, it's not luxury. Gotcha.
It's not, no,
Okay.
it's active,
Okay.
but no, it's not, I don't want to be judgmental. It's not shishi.
Shishi. Yeah. No, that's fair.
But it's like,
Yeah.
it's middle class.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's good
Good
housing.
for San Rafael, which is fantastic because Marin County is not easy to get something like that through.
Yeah.
So how do we, let's talk about, shishi versus non-shishi. There's ways to do it nonprofit wise as well, which I think Eden does mostly nonprofit stuff. You get a lot of pushback in urban areas to try to do that too. Good for him for pulling it off. The way people afford it, because we get this all the time, right? Active adults cheaper than assisted living. We have assisted living buildings that are, $8,000-9,000 a month for, just walking in the door. But the way that people pay for it and the way that the market even judges what the market rate is based on how expensive your homes are. So what the market does is they go around and what we know about the demographic, the senior demographic, is most of you are really good and paid off your homes and have either little to no mortgage whatsoever. And so what happens in senior living for people to live luxuriously is they take that house that, in an area around here is worth $1 million or more, even for a most basic house. And they either sell it or they refinance it or they reverse mortgage, and they take that money and they live off of it for the rest of their years. And that is 95% of what seniors do. And there are a portion of seniors who say, I'm not going to spend my money that way and I'm going to leave it for my family, my kids. And then there's others who have more money or maybe different circumstances. And they're like, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to live shishi downtown and we're going to spend top dollar and I'm going to sell my house. And this is how we afford it. And not only do they afford that, but what comes next is the most expensive part, which is the home health part. So these are non-licensed buildings. You can't give care there. I can't have care staff on there. People don't want to move out. They live there. That's their home. And so what you end up with is most of these buildings are 2 bedrooms. They're 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1 bedroom on one side, living room, kitchen in the middle, another master bedroom on the other side, usually 2 masters. Either husband or the wife or the family together lives in 1 bedroom and the caregiver lives in the other bedroom. It's usually a foreigner. It's usually someone who they pay cash under the table. They get to live there, rent board free, and they work 40-50 hours a week. And there's still only 1 car because that person doesn't have the car either. But that is the most expensive portion of it. So whatever you pay in rent, you can double that for that person to live with you. And again, they do it all the time because the liquidity in their home, which the mayor was talking about, is they're sitting on it and it actually hurts your economy because they're not moving and the young people aren't buying because they're not selling, and then it drives everything up. And so it's really just kind of 2 different markets. Something like this will outprice a lot of the market, but not all of the market, not Petaluma, because Petaluma has a lot of high-end houses and a lot of seniors who own those high-end houses who are looking for something shishi like this. And I guess to kind of conclude on that, it's very unlikely people come from too far outside. Certainly not San Francisco. What we know about seniors, particularly as they get into their 80s, is that they've owned their house for the last 30+ years. It's paid off in cash. Since they've lived in that house for 30 years, that's where their doctors are, their friends are, their families are, everything, their churches. So they won't move more than 5 miles. That is kind of a really strong statistic. When we're going in and looking at developments where we're going to build the next senior living building, I literally take a 3-mile and a 5-mile radius, and that's all we look at. Don't care about anything else because we know 90 to 95% of our residents are going to come in within that area. But within that 3 to 5 mile area, not only am I looking at the people, I'm looking at the housing values. And that's how we're able to determine whether or not it works or doesn't work.
Already determined that Petaluma is a good market?
Petaluma is a good market. There's things, well, first of all, what we're talking about here is active adult in urban area is a really great market. There's nothing like it in Petaluma. There's assisted living. There's even assisted living developments that are on the horizon. But there's nothing like this. Active adult urban environment.
Thank you. I have heard, I've been aware of when places like this go up, not in urban areas, but that people will have their parents move there from someplace else because they want to be close to care for them. So that,
Sometimes.
yeah, so that.
If
so
you
that-
can convince your parent to do it, and you
Yes.
know how you convince your dad, good luck.
Yeah.
Convince your mom, maybe,
Right.
but convince your dad, right? Because you know it's really hard to get. Change is hard, especially to get away from your church, especially to get away from your doctor.
And the final thing is, yes, it's true that men live longer than women, but women spend more years in disability. So it's a
Yeah.
trade-off. Do
Yeah.
you like exit younger, quickly, longer, and have
Yeah,
difficulty.
that's so true.
Thanks. It's working?
Yeah.
I guess I want to start by saying I did not appreciate your shot at the unions and the $50 an hour. To live in this community, $50 an hour is probably about what you need to live in this community. So when you talk about paying people less than that, it just creates, you know, a chaotic housing market. People driving into town. I don't need to tell you the story.
Oh yeah.
I do resent
Yeah.
that $50 an hour union.
Yeah.
Statement that you said. I'm kind of looking more for creative solutions here. I think some of our most successful senior housing projects in this area have clearly been done by not-for-profit organizations, ecumenical organizations. We have Burbank Housing, we have PEP Housing, very successful. They've managed to assemble the land and build a very attractive, affordable senior housing. So, and you know, I hear you talking about market rate senior housing and financing that and the difficulties of financing that, but I'm also looking for some creative ideas. For example, at some of the senior living facilities, there are buy-ins where you buy in at the beginning, pay a monthly, and you get some equity and get some back. Are we talking about this here?
No.
Where are the ideas coming from you, the developer? I only have a glimpse of.
Yeah,
of
well,
the world. I'd
good,
like to hear
yeah.
more about your creative
Yeah.
ideas rather than the problems.
Yeah, so let's address the $50 an hour thing. So it's tough to have it both ways. You can't pay people $60, $70 an hour and then have an affordable project, right? And that's what it comes down to. That's the problem. And that's where developers run into all the time. We want to pay everyone the best. We want to hire the unions. We want to do that. And then I want you to turn around and I want you to do it for a price that you'll lose money on.
How would it be done?
I'm not here to tell you to solve a problem. I'm here to tell you what downtowns want, and they want shishi, expensive, high-end, active adult, and people can afford it. Not everyone can afford it, but that's what they want. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. I'm not an affordable developer. I'm not here to tell you how to do affordable designs in your downtown area, because quite frankly, I don't think that's what people really want. I don't think that's what it's almost impossible to make it work because of all the costs that come along with it. You can build in suburban areas and you can build 2 stories, wood framing, surface parking. You can make nonprofits like that work. It is much, much harder to do so in an urban area. And I was tasked to come here to talk to you about how do you develop in an urban area? And you develop in an urban area by building high-end, nice projects that seniors who can afford it want to live in.
You want?
I just want to say, I want to appreciate what you just said. And say that, you know, there needs to be a variety of marketplaces. And if you want, and I'm guessing if you want people to move out of their nice downtown homes that are worth $1 or $2 million, they're not going to want to move to a so-so apartment in a not so she building and give up their beautiful home in West Petaluma. But if this was an option, they might say, hey, I can do that. My kids can move into my nice, beautiful house with my grandkids, and I'll have something new that's, you know,
That's
that's
right.
comparable in style and,
Yeah.
yeah. So I can see how you need both. And then the good thing is that leaves the affordable projects for the people who need the lower rents. So you're not competing for the same housing. So having that variety can keep them from
That's right.
competing.
The people who have those $1 million, $2 million homes, that's what they want. They want something nice. They want something fancy. They want to walk to the restaurants. They want to walk to the stores. They want to do all of those things, and they can afford to do it. And that's what they're going to pay for. And that's the market that I think a lot of urban downtown areas want and could utilize. It really can spark something, but it's not the affordable side. There's a portion of it that's affordable, but the majority of it is not.
Jason, thanks for coming. I saw your website and all the wonderful projects that you've built. And did you say that 90% of a community, about the equity in the home, it can sustain this couple to come into one of these and live for 10, 20 years,
Yeah.
including the assisted?
Yeah, because again, most people have some form of Social Security as well, and some people have some little retirements. It's not 100% that it just gets sucked straight from there. But yeah, that's where everyone's looking at. You're looking at those areas and saying, what's the medium home income? We know that that's their equity, and then if it's $60,000, you figure $5,000 a month for a 1-bedroom, right? That's $60,000 a year. And their house is worth $2 million. That's a long time, even if they didn't have Social Security and everything else that comes along with it.
I wondered if you had looked at any projects like you build that use heavy timber that saves 3/5 of the time of steel and concrete,
Yeah,
a much reduced crew, high paid,
Totally.
high skilled,
yeah.
and Minnesota, 17
Yeah, good for you
stories,
going heavy
33
timber.
stories.
Yeah, good for you.
The
Yeah, it's
turnstone.
new out here in California. Heavy timber is relatively new construction type for California. Everyone's very excited about it and looking at it. The fire departments are the tricky ones. And what they'll tell you is they can stipulate that anybody above the 3rd or the 4th floor has to be non-ambulatory, meaning they can't be in a wheelchair. That's not always the case, but heavy timber in California is a new thing where people are really starting to explore it. But what we're finding is it's jurisdiction by jurisdiction on how they interpret the California Fire Code and how heavy timber works on high-rise buildings.
Yeah.
Because we've had so little of it, there's not a lot of case study for it. But it is very new. It is very up and coming. A lot of people are excited about it, but it also isn't widely used yet in California. In California. The Northwest does it all the time. And we were like, we should take a playbook out of there. And we're trying to bring it out here. And we're getting the woods now available, and the wood's cheaper than what it was. But when you start comparing it against like aluminum stud framing, it's sort of a toss up. And then you risk, like with aluminum and metal, the fire department's not going to give you the business about non-ambulatory, but with wood timber, with the heavy wood timber, you go for a little bit of a risk. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I was wondering if you or really anyone in the room that knows of what I've been talking about folks I know who are moving. They're maybe my age, like 40, 50, 60 years old, but their parents are getting older and they're trying to move closer. And so they're often considering, oh, well, can we get a house together? Or like making these kind of decisions, go to living really close. Are there models for multifamily units where the 2 different generations might live in the same units close to each other? Are they marketable? Is that not marketable?
Super great question. It's something it's very rare. I'm working on something very similar, but it's a campus type situation where the challenge where you're talking about is licensing and regulations come into play. So anyone if there's any sort of assisted living whatsoever, you have to be Department of Justice and FBI background check to be around in the building, even to just volunteer. There's all these like crazy rules that the Department of Social Services has. Now, something like this, where you have active adult, you could in theory, but then you start blending. Now you're just market rate, right? Because now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm market rate. Now I have a project in Orchid, and down near San Luis Obispo, where we actually do have assisted living, market rate apartments, senior apartments, and actually daycare and a whole like preschool thing set up. But again, it's really so hard, very hard to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a couple online that I'm going to try to get the.
Okay, sounds good. Looking at the photos I've seen on your slideshow, most of your buildings are 3, 4, 5 stories?
3 stories, no more than 3 stories, mostly 2. And the reason you don't go over 3 is the wood framing issue. So
Okay,
if you go over 3 stories, if you go over 3 stories, you now have to build out of either metal or iron.
and you can reach economic or financial feasibility at 3 stories?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
3 stories wood framing all day long. But you need a minimum of an acre, And that's where, when you start getting into like small downtown urban sites, you have to go 5, 6 stories or more.
Okay, well, yeah, my question was meant to be urban.
Yeah.
How tall do you have to go in an urban site to make it work?
You let's not go height. Let's go, because height is
Yeah.
determined based on the size of the parcel. You need a minimum of 150 units.
Per acre?
Just in, yeah, in
okay.
general, like you're really going for a unit count, because it's just hitting economies of scale. You have to get a certain amount of units. You'll have developers who want to push for 200 plus. No one will do less than 100. And my sweet spot's around 150, but it has to be more than 100. Anything less, it doesn't work. Just doesn't even come close to working. And the more you get above, the better it is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See if we can untangle this. And I noticed a few hands raised. I guess they've gone down now, but yeah, I don't have a way to feed the computer back to the screen here. So type your questions in and we'll read them off. First, way up before you started talking, I was wondering about experience with zip cars or shared cars versus lots of parking, car share services and such.
That's the way of the future. Waymo, all of that. Even in our senior living projects, most of our senior living projects, we have less than 15% of residents actually even still own a car. And of those 15%, like 10% of them still drive the car. And majority of residents use Uber or Lyft. And we also, at buildings like this, just so you know, like an active adult building like that we're looking at and talking about here, you would have at least 1, if not 2 town cars, and they would probably be electric, because that's the cool thing to do. It'd be like a Rivian. But you would end up with a couple town cars for residents to be able to use if they needed to go. And it's typically like a 5-mile radius. So you'll say, we'll drive you for free within a 5-mile radius. And that's part of your service as rent that is included.
Cool. Let's see. We have a takedown of your architectural choice with it looks like barracks to me. And I was going to propose that even though it feels like that, people should go up and wander around that Zen Center thing in northern Healdsburg, because it's actually kind of got a cool vibe once you get past that it's surrounded by parking.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got suggestions for people to go check out cool architecture in this form factor, that'd be good.
Yeah, there's, again, it's this is a really new form factor. This active adult, high-end kind of luxury active adults is very new. There's places in LA that have done it and been spectacular at. Calabasas has some of the nicest of these types of communities. The designs are typically pretty boxy, because you're trying to figure out how to build it reasonably cost. And then you see a lot of these inward facing courtyards, and that's really just for a sense of protection, quiet. And then again, you kind of keep the outside noise out is kind of the big thing. And then you can have courtyards off of the inside. So this is kind of a standard figure. We do a lot of figure 8s, or we'll do a lot of square boxes like this.
Are we talking retirement communities, condos or rental apartments? And I think you went into that you're actually basically doing condos?
Well, it's for rent.
Okay. Oh,
they're
it's
for
so
rent.
just for-
Yeah, you have, there's several different ways. The gentleman talked about buy-ins. That's a CCRC. It's the most expensive thing you could possibly do in senior housing. Most of those places cost a minimum of $500,000 to buy in, and then in addition to your $500,000, you pay monthly fees along the way. So very, very expensive, but they're very luxurious, and you get to move along the way. You can go from independent to assisted, even to skilled. What we're talking about here, and then again, you have assisted living and memory care, which is another licensed product. What we're talking about here is really market rate active adult for seniors, targeted not at the 55, but closer to the late 60s, early 70s and 80s. And it is just for rent market rate.
Cool. We have someone else talking about prevailing wage agreements and wages, and I think you
Yeah.
addressed that fairly well. Is like,
Yeah.
it's
We can-
money.
yeah, you can do it. It's just money. And that's what drives the cost up, right? I mean, if we can build a building for 600,000 a unit, or we can build it for 400,000 a unit, at the end of the day, that's going to go directly to how much that rent is for that building. And so all of the prevailing wages jobs, it's great, but when you bring it into housing, it's going to be a direct impact to the rent always.
Right. And we've had some conversations here about various affordable developments and what their funding sources were and
Yeah.
requiring union or not. And
Yeah.
yeah, totally get that. And I think that covers the things we have in the chat. Do we have other questions in here?
So I'm in the demographic, but I don't own a house, so that I don't think this would. But for those of you who are in the demographic, do you think that there are enough people in town that would buy into something like that? Like, what's your sense when among your circle of interest or demand for something like this? Put you on the spot.
Well, yeah, I think I think you're putting me on the spot, which is good. I like that. And, first I want to thank Jason for coming tonight. And we asked him specifically to address his expertise and his business models and things like that, because we don't see those in Petaluma. We see a certain pattern of things. I mean, there was one question about what if I want to have multi-generational on property, and that's kind of where the ADU market's coming in. And this generally points to the fact that we have a crisis in housing on all products and in all age demographics and in all demographics. And the solutions are not cookie cutter. There is no one answer that's the right answer. So I think hitting the ADU market strong and hitting other markets strong, it's important to be open to all potential projects. Whether this has potential in Petaluma and with our economics, I don't know, and that's where a developer gets to risk the big bucks on whether they think they can fill a project like this or not, and whether it be attractive. And that's a community conversation, probably bigger than just our little community group here. That gets into general plan and other bigger areas. But I did want to know that we talked about, it often comes up that it costs just as much to build an affordable housing project as it does a market rate housing. And there's a variety of reasons for one. One is that all affordable housing projects are built with, are subsidized, and they're subsidized with government money. And the rule with government money is you use union labor on all your projects. So inherently, they're at the highest cost, right? And even if they reduce, on the private side, very often they're not using union labor, or there's a mix of union and non-union. And so those two products come out the same. But the rent is less on the affordable because it's been subsidized by you and me and the rest. And if you've been to many of our Know Before You Grows, we talked about the Bay Area Housing Bond that came through before and really didn't have public support right now to help subsidize affordable housing for those who need it. And maybe that's more where we want to invest energies, and maybe that's where the real opportunities are. Those of us with the more well-to-do in our boomer generation can subsidize, can afford to subsidize. But it will take every different viewpoint to solve the crisis. And I just wanted to hit on that a little bit. Yeah, and so I'm not sure if you want to keep that question open to anybody in the room. I do know that I have many neighbors hitting my age and my knee condition, and they're not looking for that two-story house anymore. They are looking for something, but not much is opening up. And if you don't qualify for affordable, what apartment, what multi-family unit is being built for you? So we're kind of caught in a trap of no movement. The house that was right for us in our 20s and 30s is not right for us in our 60s and 70s. So any closing words you have for us?
Focus a lot on affordability. We focus a tremendous amount on affordability, which is the right thing to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's that portion of demographic who doesn't qualify. And as the mayor said, what do we do? And that's the portion they do have an exorbitant amount of money potentially to spend on something very luxurious like this. And I don't know if Petaluma has that availability or not, or I can't tell you for a fact if we can fill 150 units with people who are willing to spend $5-6 grand a month on an apartment. But these are types of solutions that developers like us are trying to work with cities like you guys to try to find ways to solve this gap, because there is a huge gap. Okay, thanks.
So we have a question from Dwayne, and I just wanted to tie into yours that as we look at our house, we're kind of thinking it'd be nice to live in. I don't know that we could afford this. We have a 768 square foot house. It's not $1 million house, although maybe wait a week or two. But someplace that is, we're a mile from downtown. It sure would be nice if we had more amenities closer to us. We wouldn't mind living in dense multifamily. So yeah, it's attractive. I can't afford it, but it's attractive. Dwayne had a question.
Two issues I would bring up. One would be, assuming you're doing an urban building, you're basically tearing something down. And I was wondering if, in order to get an acre downtown cleared and ready, what kind of price could you pay for an acre of the land? And how do you calculate that? Is the cost of tearing down, the cost of buying it and whatnot? And the other question is, do you get any treatment in the way of the interest rates? I remember in 08, or 09, the Federal Reserve decided to give the 4 big banks 1% loans for $1 trillion each. And I don't know that any houses were built with that money. Do you get 1% loans to build housing for the people that need them?
Love that question. Love both of those questions. So let's start with the 1%. So no, we don't. But what we do get, so construction, it's the hardest thing over the last 18 months to get construction loans. The construction market has dried up. Development is slow. It's almost non-existent. And the reason is because the interest rates are so high. Where we do get benefit is after the building is built and once the building is stabilized, not active adult, but senior living assisted, any licensed facility has access to Fannie, Freddie, and HUD loans. Definitely not 1%. Today, they're about 6%. Actually, just closed one today, 5.85%. So 5.85% with a HUD loan. And I'll tell you what, that's the best rate I've heard of in the last 18 months from anybody on just about anything. So they are good rates, but they're certainly not 1%, and you can't get them for construction. Construction is a whole beast. In order to get construction financing, you have to guarantee, you have to do personal guarantees. You have to come in with a minimum right now of 30 to 35% of the equity. And so if you're talking about a project like this, you're talking about $100 million to build. And so you're looking at roughly $30 to $35 million of equity that would be needed for a project like this. And then you would get the rest in bank financing. And then, I'm sorry, you had a first part of your question besides the interest rates. What was? Land cost. 18 months ago, 24 months ago, you could sell an acre of entitled, like ready to go, good acre, developable acre for $8 to $9 million an acre. Pricing over the last 18 months has plummeted because no one can build and develop. So that same acre is probably around 5 to 6 million. And then as soon as you entitle it, it takes about 18 months. First, you got to go through the development process and entitle it. That's usually a year to 18 months. And then after you do that, you got to build the construction drawings. That's another 2 years. But 3.5 years later, after you start, your what you bought for 5 or 6 million, we anticipate to then now be worth 8 to 9 million again. So when we're looking at buying things, we're looking at how many units we can get. So we're trying to buy unentitled land around 60,000 a unit, right? That's what we can pay, $60,000 per unit for how many units we can get on it. And then once we put in millions of dollars and years of work, we want it to be worth close to 100,000 a unit in value.
I just wanted to add a little bit on there. It's really fun to get inside the mind of a developer. I'm not sure I'm really comfortable in that space all the time. But the data he brings and the real world experience and the other side of it, we're clearly seeing that we don't build any housing. I mean, Petaluma has averaged 112 units of housing over the last 6 years, 112 units per year. And that includes the tiny homes, the Montero Hotel conversion, those very, very low AMI permit supportive housing building. I mean, so we build very few units, and it's endemic, which is why state rules are changing, and we're pulling out all the tricks. You asked about interest rates. The county has set up a red district. It's a way to do refinance, to try and reboot redevelopment funds from before. The city and other cities are looking at JPAs, where the bond indebtedness doesn't sit at the city level. It sits at a somebody else's lap, a joint group of cities, so that we're not burdened by that. Projects still have to work. You still have to be able to rent them for the cost of building them. And that's the bottom line on that. Did you want to weigh in?
I was just going to comment, one of the things that I've run into a lot recently is papers which again and again reiterate that it doesn't matter what price point you bring in the housing, even if you build, as long as you're building more units in an area, it brings the price down, no matter where that supply is coming in. Now, those of us who are homeowners might get a little concerned about that, but but yeah, luxury brings the price down as long as you're actually adding units and not just redeveloping.
All right, I think we're there for the evening. No more questions online?
I think we're good.
Anyone have a question in-house? Thank you very much, Jason.
Sorry, I'm not sure. The reason we're here is you're a developer, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you're proposing this luxurious,
Not proposing anything.
okay.
Nope,
So
not-
you're just
not-
educating us about this idea.
Yep, the
Okay.
your fine mayor asked to come talk to you guys about what it takes to build a senior living project, an active adult, not just senior living, but an active adult project in an urban environment.
Right.
And it's one of the most difficult things anyone can do. So we came here to talk about that and what it takes and some of the sacrifices that people might have to make in order for that to happen, but also the benefits of it. There's no specific project. This is just a photo that was done by AI. There's nothing we're proposing. It's just pure education.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you've already identified a location that would be a possible.
Are you interested in moving in?
development. I'm always interested.
There we go. See, there we
Because
go.
I'm in the demographics.
That's yeah.
And I have lots of friends who are too, so.
We've been looking to identify, part of it was to come here and talk to folks and see if, what kind of reaction that the group gave and then to see if it made sense to dive in. We've identified areas, but yeah, it's not something most developers jump into unless they have support from the city and some kind of guidance, because it's just too tricky to navigate otherwise.
Right.
So
Can I add a question? What is your definition of urban in this case?
Yeah, it's great. It's wide and plenty.
I know you don't San
Yeah,
Francisco or Philadelphia. or
yeah,
something,
exactly.
But
I think what it really comes down to is it's your downtown, right? It's
a half mile of the downtown.
no, I think it's got to be
adjacent
closer.
to the downtown.
How
Inside of it.
What's the most you walk on a weekly
I have
basis?
a bad example. 'cause
You walk a lot. I think most people don't want to walk past 3 or 4 blocks in
Yeah.
general. And so you want it to be close enough where you can walk. You know, you kind of, because again, it's the whole idea is that you can walk to these restaurants and all the things that are there. So if you have to get in your car, it defeats the whole purpose, which means urban is really tight. The smaller your downtown is, the tighter that it is.
Thank you. Yeah, and Petaluma has a crisis. I think it's important that we address it and we look at it from all perspectives and find out if any of it is the right answer for us. Because when you have a crisis, you really should take action. So thank you all very much for being here tonight. And Dave wants me to make sure you know you're all invited to the Urban Chat lunch conversations tomorrow at Aqua's at noon, right? And then in 2 weeks, we have, what's the date on that? 12th? March 12th, we have our next Urban Chat, and I hope you'll all join us then. Thanks and good night.